If you had watched a Meghan Markle show with Love Meghan, what is the first thing that comes to your mind? Is it exciting or interesting or educational or anything like that? I mean, it could be, but my particular thought of Meghan Markle's show is that it's still pretentious, boring, basic, not that impressive, so many different things. But as all the think pieces have been coming out about this show and just so many discussions surrounding it, what came to mind to me is sort of a light bulb moment where I was like, oh, I think I know why, because of the viscerally negative reaction to Megan's show, why all of a sudden this is really hitting people wrong. And all of a sudden, I think people are really starting to take a dislike to her. And this is people who didn't really have an opinion on Meghan Markle before, but they watch this show and they start to really dislike her. And it's not just because of everything that's gone on with the royal family, it's not her and Harry's PR stunts, it's not really anything to do with that. What I found interesting, and this was sort of spurned on by an article I read from The Guardian, is that Harry and Meghan are profoundly mediocre. Even her. She tries to proclaim herself as some sort of great intellectual. She's so accomplished. I mean, she was the most educated woman ever to marry into the royal family. And yet she flopped out after a year and a half. Why is that? Well, it's not just because of the bad British press. It's because, in many ways, she's claiming to be extraordinary when she is obscenely ordinary and mediocre. As far as I can tell, she's not particularly talented, especially in the stuff she's trying to do right now. She's a terrible host. She seems like, honestly, a terrible hostess. So many things. Meghan Markle is just not particularly engaging. Meghan Markle claims to take the ordinary and elevate it into the extraordinary, when I would argue that she's mediocre and sometimes can get to the point of ordinary. And that is what I think is bothering people because we are told one thing and yet we see another on screen. And that has happened too many times since she's entered into the royal family. At some point, the bandwidth was going to start wearing out. And we are seeing that play out right now. It's not necessarily Harry and Meghan's pursuit of a paycheck that's killing them, is that they're doing it in a field they have no talent in. And it's becoming appallingly clear that the only reason they got any job is because of the royal family. Because I can watch Meghan Markle's show right now and I can go on Instagram and find 10 to 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 women doing it better than she is on Netflix. So, guys, we are going to explore this idea today. But if you haven't been to Royal News Network before, hello, my name is Brittany. I provide compelling royal commentary, which I hope gives you guys a different perspective on things. So if you guys want to hit that subscribe button, I would love to have you back. We have an amazing channel here, great community. And I do also want to shout out as well Andalusia Diamonds. They do these amazing pieces. They focus mostly on lab created diamonds. However, they do have a golden goddess collection. One of my favorites are these gold hoop earrings. They actually come in 3 sizes, small, medium, and large. I actually have the large here, which I think are a fabulous size. I really love having this statement classic twisted gold earring hoop here. I just love it. I think it's awesome. And then they also gave me this amazing gold chain necklace, which I'm loving because you can layer this with so many different things. You can stick to yellow gold, you can use rose gold or white gold. I think it's just a classic statement piece that you can change out or leave and layer. It's just awesome. So if you guys are interested in any of these pieces, go ahead and check out the link up above. And if you use code ROYAL20, you shall save 20%. So for this video, everyone, we might get a little intellectual here because I like to try to look at things with a different perspective. And there's just been so many think pieces, and I've sort of enjoyed this time because I'm in the Harry and Meghan trenches. I've been watching this since the beginning. I love watching royals. I follow all royals. So I've watched this whole drama with Harry and Meghan play out. And it's nice to have somebody from the outside looking in and pointing out other things I haven't really paid attention to yet. And one of them was particularly this article in The Guardian. And it was this think piece that said the Sussexes have to earn their bread somehow, so let them make cake. Now, there were a couple of different things here. Somebody didn't like that they thought they were pro-Sussex towards the end, but she pointed something out here, this author, Martha Gill, which I thought was really illuminating and really got me thinking. So She said, I suppose it's obvious what we want for the pair to keep their mouths shut. We would like them to act as if they were still working royals, but without work. We want decorum and dignity. We do not want them to do anything as vulgar as make money. This is sort of interesting. And I want you to stick on this idea because Harry and Meghan, after leaving the royal family, yes, they do need to make money. I 100% understand that. I'm not saying that they can't make money. I don't think anybody's really ever said that. And obviously, what they have done to make money is particularly egregious, which is to sell their souls for the pile of cash, which I mean, specifically the Oprah Winfrey interview, Netflix, and then Harry's book, Spare. What they did in those three instances is that in order to make money, they compromised relationships. They compromised, you could say, a veil of understanding that this certain thing would be kept private between two people. They did so many things that violated their own privacy, their family's privacy, so many different things, because it was more important for them to make money than it was for them to act with a level of dignity. That was strike number one. That was strike number one. Because for the public, we understand again that they need to fund their lifestyles. But at the same time, wasn't there better ways to do it than trashing his entire family? I think there was. I think there was. But we all knew it was coming. We all know Meghan has said ad infinity that she wants to get her story out there, get her side out there, so many different things. She's done this in a variety of different ways. But like everything, a choice has a consequence. And the consequence for Harry and Meghan in this instance is that people like them less. But if they had stopped there and maybe done their own thing, been quiet, maybe, just maybe, we just sort of forgotten and moved on from it. We did also have archetypes, which is her thing. I didn't really mention that one. That one was where she was subtly trying to correct the record against her by bringing on other women to talk about specific stereotypes, not archetypes, Meghan, that women experience. And the show had a grand debut and then cratered after the last several episodes because it was exceedingly dull. Like so many things that they do, they have a problem with dullness in their storytelling. But when we get to this point, with Love Meghan is sort of different than everything else because we had Harry's Heart of Invictus, which didn't do well, which is actually a shame because there were aspects of it that were, I think, pretty good and compelling. But like everything they did, it was bloated unnecessarily. It was dull at times. The pacing wasn't great. They concentrated on storylines that really didn't matter. But it was understandable that maybe that wouldn't do well because I've always argued that the appeal of Invictus is sort of limited and sort of dwindling every year. Then we also have Harry's Polo series, which actually could have been their best performing thing if they had leaned into the trashiness of it rather than trying to make it some sort of intellectual piece. And they didn't repeat ad nauseum the same things, like this one particular player, he's the best, he's the best. I feel like I heard that 5 times in every single episode, and I just wanted to stop at some point. But then we get to With Love Meghan. And this show is very different because it is solely Meghan controlled. Harry has no producer credit to it. She was in control of everything. She was in control of the shoot, where the guests were, the concept, so many different things. And so in many ways, we have been told that Meghan was this incredibly accomplished woman, that her blog, The Tig, was huge, that she was this good actress on this great series, that she came into the royal family so incredibly accomplished, and they didn't appreciate the magnitude of her brilliance as a working royal. And so they sidelined her unnecessarily and all these sorts of things. But then you get to this show, and this show was the moment Meghan was supposed to prove herself. She was supposed to show us all this amazing person that she's always been, this talent that she's been holding back, these skills that we haven't been able to explore yet because, for some inexplicable reason, apparently you can't share your passions when you're royal, which is totally false. As Queen Camilla, who's very passionate about reading, has made a huge platform in her royal role about the importance of reading. Yes, Catherine in the early years, Prince William with the Earthshot, but for some reason, you can't exhibit your talents as a royal. I call BS on that. But Meghan had this moment to shine as she utterly and completely failed the landing. She was dull. Seemed like the woman could barely hold on a conversation with another human being. I watched some of her hosting tips, like wedding towels, getting wet towels wet, like hand towels, putting lemon fused oil on it, putting in the fridge so you can cool down after a big hike during the day. And I'm like watching her cook. And then we'll get to the Drew Barrymore show because that is rather illuminating. I just couldn't help but think, this is the best you got? Really? Really? Because there's not much there. And I think what has happened is that Meghan has always and forever and continues to oversell and underdeliver. And at some point, that wasn't going to work anymore. And I think we've officially reached that point. The people who loved her are still always going to love her. But the people in the audience that she had a chance to convert, I would argue that number is between 5 and 10%. And maybe that's a little bit overestimating. I would bet you bottom to dollar, most people only continue to watch it in order to hate watch it to just see if it got any better. And I say that not as somebody who's not a fan of Meghan Markle. I'm not. I'll totally admit that. But because I watched it and I'm like, number one, who does this? But number two, I don't believe the premise. So Meghan promises us a particular thing, that she is a great hostess and she's going to teach you how to be a great hostess. And here's what she says about hosting, which is very interesting on the Drew Barrymore show. Take a listen to a little bit of this clip here.
Well, yes, and that's what I think we all strive to do in our homes. You just want people to feel comfortable, and that's just an extension of grace, right? Grace is making someone feel comfortable. We might not all agree on the same things, but you should still be able to have a seat at the table and feel comfortable there. And that, I think, is the key to how you host and show up for people. So if something goes wrong, just go with it. It's okay.
All right. So she talks about being a hostess, you need to exhibit grace. That's funny, Meghan Markle. I've never seen you extend grace to your father, your half siblings, your father in law, your brother in law, your sister in law, extended members of the family on all sides, friends, so many different people in your life. You have not been a good hostess to. You have not extended grace to. Think of Jessica Mulroney. This woman's children, all three of her children, were in Meghan's wedding. Her two sons were holding Meghan's veil, and she no longer speaks to her over a stupid social media issue. Jessica somehow got into beef with someone, and she was a woman of color, and somehow this blew up into this unbelievably stupid controversy. And it was happened at the height of BLM. So I think that she got caught up in that. And granted, Jessica probably shouldn't have done what she did. But where's the grace, Meghan Markle? Where's the grace? You didn't exhibit any of that. So how in the world can I buy into your premise of a show if I don't believe you live by what you preach? She undermines her audience by not living by her own standards. She only wants to host people who are deferential to her, who like bathe her in adulation. Those are the only people she wants at her house. If anybody challenges her, anyone asks her a specific question, anything like that, she cannot stand. She even couldn't stand to be on Drew Barrymore and have Drew share how much she loved her mother-in-law. Meghan physically recoiled from a picture of Drew and Princess Diana. Meghan is not a good hostess. So that's strike number one, is that she doesn't live by her own premise. And we'll get more into the details of that later because, oh boy, is it illuminating. Number two is that she seems sort of like a terrible hostess. There was a bit, and I looked, and I swear, guys, Paramount Plus had deleted it, and I made a Facebook comment mentioning this, and they had an extra bit on Meghan that is no longer there. I don't know if they'll add it back or just took it away forever. But Meghan talked about this thing, and I remember thinking to myself, that's not normal. That's creepy. So she says that when a guest comes to her house, she likes to sometimes, if it's a cold winter night, and to be fair, it can get cold in California at night. It is a desert environment. Some people for a while did not have AC. Having lived in California myself, I can attest to this. So what happened was that she, on winter nights, decides for her guests sometimes that she's going to fill up a hot water bottle. And she is going to, and when she first said that, I was like, what? And then she said she would slip into their room and put it in their sheets. And so that when they came in to go to sleep, it would feel like they are being enveloped by a warm hug. And all I could think of is that that's sort of creepy. Why are you going into somebody's room? If a guest is staying at my house, that is their room. If I need to go into the room for whatever reason, I'm like, hey, can I go in here? I just need to find something. I need to access X, Y, and Z. And the person, of course, would be like mostly fine, but I'm not going to sneak into someone's bedroom and decide something that I want because she says here he does it for her, something I want and force it onto them. Because what if they sleep hot and they're like, oh my gosh, you just made this bed a gazillion degrees. I can't sleep now. Does anybody ever tell her that? It doesn't make sense. It's overbearing. And we watch throughout this whole show this hostess who is incredibly overbearing and ridiculous, taking pretzels from one bag and putting them into another when she could just put the original bag on the tray. Nobody would think any less of her. And then she has to write contains nuts because she took the bag away with the ingredients. So that's kind of dumb, actually, because it would be better if you're worried about allergies, Meghan Markle, to give them the bag themselves. That way they can read the back and they know whether or not they're allergic to something on it. It's just sort of overbearing. It's ridiculous. And I honestly think, having watched the show, I don't think she's a good hostess. I really don't. She seems like somebody who's so concerned. You can kind of think of the Bible story of Martha and Mary. And Martha's in the kitchen and doing all the things. So he sort of chastises her at one point because she was more worried about being the hostess than she was learning from Jesus. And I mention that because I think there's some great wisdom there. Martha was more worried about the look of things and making sure everything was going to plan. I'm sure she was doing good work. It's not that he was criticizing her for hostessing. What he was criticizing her for is that he's doing a teaching. And instead of actually being there to listen, she's more worried about making sure the chicken is good. And of course, it's good to make sure that you don't give everybody food poisoning. But Meghan strikes me as somebody who is constantly looking and trying to make sure everything is perfect as she's hosting. So she's probably peppering you with a million questions. Do you need deodorant? Do you need floss? Do you need a toothbrush? Do you need toothpaste? I have all those things. And that's great as a hostess to have little bottles of different things for people staying over. But it seems like to me, Meghan overdoes it to such an extent that I think she would become obnoxious. So I don't even believe the premise of her show that she's a good hostess. The other interesting thing is her as a cook, because a big chunk of her, you could say, performance on this series is proving that she's a good cook, because being a good hostess means being a good cook. And I don't think she is. Now, it has nothing to do necessarily with how she prepared the pasta thing. That still didn't look all that great. Actually, should probably recreate that and see if that's halfway decent at all. But the big thing I thought of was on the Drew Barrymore show, watching her attempt to make the easiest cookies in the world, and Drew having to coach her, going, long should we cook it? What's the time? And Meghan having to explain that, but also just Meghan's really mediocre little bit, because at one point too, the camera's over them and they're trying to make this, and Meghan's more worried about getting the clean cups back together than showing them how to fix it. Because at the end of the day, you don't need to stack the cups, Meghan Markle. That'll get done at a different point. And it was like really clinky in the microphone and everything. But watch a little bit of this here.
Some sugar, powdered sugar and granulated sugar. You're going to cream all of that together.
Do I do this now?
Yes, if you
Okay.
can.
See, I
do
can
it
make
with a spoon if it's going to make your life
appliances,
easier. You just break that up a little bit. You want the butter, of course, to be room temp, so it's going to be easier to break up.
Guys, I watched that, and to be quite honest, I didn't think Meghan Markle was a great cook. I don't think she offered anything there that was anything more unusual, different, better than anything else. And what's fascinating here is that I would love to, if anybody ever was in that audience and you ever reach out to me, I would love to know, did you actually eat the cookies she allegedly made? Because here's the thing. As a television company, as a show, they opened themselves up to a lot of legal fallout if they actually gave those people Meghan Markle's cookies, because they were not made in an industrial kitchen. They were homemade. They run a huge level of risk here. And you saw them, and there's kids making it, and the women's hair is down here in the cookies, you know? And so it's like, for just safety reasons, for health reasons, and for legal liability reasons, they probably couldn't give those people the cookies. You didn't see them give anybody the cookies, did you? Probably because they couldn't. Because Meghan Markle went so over the top. She made cookies that wouldn't even work with the show. So Listen to this little exchange here.
Because I made a lot for you on Sunday. When I realized you were going to do this, I said, how many people are we making cookies for? And they said, the count on the audience. I want the crew to be able to have some.
Yeah, Meghan literally made cookies for all of you guys. Each one of you are going to get to try this cookie.
Oh.
We've never had someone come here and do that.
Oh, really? Oh.
No, you're the first.
Well, my husband helped as well.
I'm just curious, guys. Although Drew complimented Meghan, I'm curious if they told her at some point, hey, you don't need to make these. Just tell us what ingredients you have, how to cook them, and we will farm it out to somebody local to make. The reason they do that is so that they can ensure safety, it limits their legal liability, so many different things. They would have to do that. But Meghan went ahead and made the cookies anyways. Then she brought them across the country. Who knows how many times they changed hands? Who knows if they were properly, in hygienic situations? Like, it's too much of a risk. And not to mention the fact that kids help make it. And she's putting her little fingerprint in it with her nail and everything. It's really gross. And if you watch her compared to Juliana, who was on next, watch a little bit of this cooking segment. It was amazing.
Takes a while.
It's taking forever.
Well, you don't want to do it too high, otherwise you burn the sugars. You want to slowly reduce them to get that syrupy, otherwise it turns and becomes bitter.
Have patience.
Patience, darling.
I like it when I like a nice char on the outside because then I can keep the inside a little juicier and pinker, but I still get that
For you, leave the meat in the fridge until right before you cook it. Then you will make sure that the inside stays that redness that you like. In Texas, that's how they cook their steaks, right? They keep it super cold, throw it on a hot pan or a hot grill, one side, other side, and you get it blue just in front.
Guys, I want to make what she was cooking. It sounded great. I felt like people in the audience were so much more engaged. And then this is another interesting comparison too, which is Kate Hudson talking about how she makes these tacos. And honestly, our family, we love tacos. We've made homemade chips in, frying them in oil and everything. And she introduced this idea of a taco. And I'm like, this is not bad. So take a little listen to this.
And it's super simple and really naughty. This is not like everything about it's naughty. So I usually do 2 packets of ground beef. I do 1 whole onion, saute the onion in like a vegetable oil or an avocado oil. I brown the beef, easy. I get taco seasoning.
It's my favorite.
I put this in and I kind of let it bubble a little.
Okay.
So I make it so that it kind of starts to get chewy. Okay. So now I'm gonna just.
Oh, I've not seen this method.
See this? Yeah. So you basically I actually open them. I like my cilantro.
I like cilantro.
Ooh, I'm gonna take some of this.
And the onions. And a little bit of cheese.
So I see Kate Hudson sing, and I picked up a little bit of something. Meghan Markle's cookies are so bare bone basic, it's not even worth putting on TV, to be quite honest. And here comes the rub, is that they have had 5 years to prove they had a particular talent in something, and they failed to do it. They failed to do it time and time again. And what I think is becoming exceedingly apparent to people who weren't even following royals is that the only reason Harry and Meghan have literally anything is because of the royal family. Because of the royal family, no other reason. They don't have a particular level of talent. They're not particularly good at the things they're doing. And so the only reason they have any of these deals is because of the royals. They didn't earn them. They didn't have a particular talent that would draw in these production companies. The obscene level of money they were thrown for the deals they got is insane, especially once we see the output. And I think if Meghan Markle was a Grace Kelly level of talent and she went back into the acting industry, sure, because she had something to pull from. Harry and Meghan, I think, just want to be given money for simply existing. And when you see her show and see how mediocre she is, how incredibly, obscenely ordinary she is in many ways. Yes, she lives this lavish lifestyle. Yes, she gets millions of dollars thrown at her, but you don't see the talent. And so I want to compare her to a second to somebody else within the royal sphere. And yes, there are a lot of comparisons between these ladies, but I think There's something here to glean, which is that Meghan Markle is exceedingly ordinary while claiming to be extraordinary. And people buy that for a certain period of time, but the more they see her, the more they realize how ordinary she is, how talentless she is in these particular situations. And of course, she has talent, but it ain't in this. But what about Catherine, the Princess of Wales? I would argue in many ways, Catherine is ordinary. Now, I know some people will freak out because she's beautiful and gorgeous and she's mother of the future king and so many different things. Yeah, but there's an every woman quality to Catherine that I think we can all emulate. She's not trying to be forceful. She's always taking, I would argue, the approach of a lady, which is sort of slowly entering the royal sphere. I would argue sometimes maybe a bit too slow, but really everything she does is very measured. And I think people appreciate it. And what has made Catherine extraordinary is that she has been ordinary in an extraordinary circumstance because she has been thrown all these things. And yet at the same time, she wears massive tiaras. She gets to go to all these state events and she gets to lead a very extraordinary life. But yet, I feel like she values being ordinary in some ways. She values being somebody who's a normal girl who fell in love with a guy who happened to have this incredible role and they happen to be in a relationship. And I think they have a solid foundation and they have been able to grow a family, grow in the spotlight, so many different things. And that's what makes Catherine extraordinary. She has never claimed to be extraordinary. She's ordinary. And I think she would argue that, yeah, I'm an average woman who ended up marrying a future king. Meghan Markle instead charged into the royal family and charged into the global spotlight, claiming she was some sort of extraordinary figure that the world just hadn't seen yet. But as time has gone on, we have all seen now how ordinary, mediocre she is. And the more she claims to the contrary, I think the more people are going to dislike her because we have eyes. We see it. I don't see what Meghan does as anything different than the 50, 100, 1,000 women do on Instagram, on Pinterest, on YouTube, on TikTok, and do it better, are more interesting, have cultivated their talent, and give us something extraordinary. Like I watch people and they decorate the cakes, and I'm like, wow. Like they're self-taught, they do this for like fun, and then they turn it into career, and then people glom on. And I watch them like, wow, you took something that could be, let's say, sort of ordinary, that's like baking, and you've made people want to watch your content. I don't want to watch Meghan Markle's content because I don't think see anything of particular value there in terms of her talent. She's not exhibiting anything that not 1,000 other women have done before her and better. And that is what's going to kill her brand. Her products need to be flawless. If they are ordinary, which I imagine they probably are, if her alleged spread is anything other than the best thing anybody has ever had, she's going to be raked over the coals. She claims to have worked on this for years. But yet, I don't totally buy that. It seems exceedingly ordinary. You look at her products and they are ordinary. Teas, a shortbread mix, a crepe mix. Those are boring products. They're exceedingly boring, average, dull products. And so she even has, I think, the challenge here because her offerings are such things that you can get anywhere. She has to make them even better. She sets herself such an impossible bar. And then she fails and craps out every single time. And that, I think, is the problem with Meghan Markle is going to have going forward. That's the issue she's always going to have, is that she is a mediocre talent, claiming to be extraordinary. And as more people see her, more and more people are seeing the ordinariness, the mediocreness. And if they had a talent and career somewhere, that yes, their connections would help them get some things, but it was their talent that was actually holding everything together. I think people would be more okay with that. But Meghan claims that this is a passion project of hers. But then why does she jump from thing to thing to thing to thing to thing before finally resting here for a hot second? She was doing a podcast and then she dropped that. They did other shows and then dropped that. Like there's so many things and ideas that have been dropped. How are we supposed to believe this is really a passion project when we haven't heard much about this until the last minute? I think her only true passion is her fancy cursive. That's her only passion throughout her whole life, or at least her whole public life. That has been the one constant, is the fancy cursive. So, yeah, I guess that's something to hang your hat on. But is it really all that extraordinary? No, it's not. She even put it on her hat. Let us remain calm, which is a phrase she stole from somebody else and not particularly clever or interesting. She is so average, beige, and basic. And she could, I think, hide that from people for a while, but she can't hide that anymore. Everybody is aware of it. And I think it's going to lead ultimately to her doom unless she finds something that she does actually have talent in and she can pursue that. I think when you're just chasing fame and money at the expense of family and friends, people notice that. You can't trick people forever. And I don't think it's going to be particularly good. At some point, their audience is going to dwindle into nothing. And I would argue, even though her show is still at number 9, at least on Sunday, the truth is in the pudding. Will her products sell? That is a true metric. If they're not selling very well, then I would argue that is a huge failure. So guys, let me know what you think of this video. Let me know what you think of Mediocre Meg, because she is mediocre for sure. Let me know in the comments below. And I'm sure she has a talent somewhere, but I have yet to see something where I'm like, wow, she's really good at X, except for the fancy cursive. She's good at that. I think that's not all that useful in life, but whatever. Who cares what I think, right? But maybe you do. Let me know in the comments below. Thank you so much again for watching, and I shall talk to you again very soon. Bye.